On the night of April 28, 2019, a simple phone call to the emergency number would forever alter lives and shake a quiet Ohio community. The voice on the line was frantic, trembling, almost incoherent. It belonged to a man whose life was unraveling in a matter of minutes. "My wife. My whole family. There's blood everywhere," he cried, desperation and horror dripping from every word. Officers arrived at the apartment within minutes, but what they saw was unlike anything they had ever encountered. A man stood at the door, hands drenched in blood, clothes soaked, barefoot, trembling uncontrollably, unable to speak. This was Rajveer Singh, a man whose presence would later shock the world, not because he had just survived a tragedy, but because he had orchestrated it. He pleaded with the officers, "Please, save my family." There was urgency in his tone, but also a strange detachment that no one could explain at the time. When the officers cautiously stepped inside the apartment, the scene that met them was far beyond any nightmare they had prepared for. 4 bodies were lying on the floor, unmoving, surrounded by pools of blood that glistened in the dim kitchen and living room light. 16 bullets had been fired, killing people who had only been sitting down for a family dinner, an evening that should have been ordinary, peaceful. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no broken locks, no sign of robbery. The door had been locked from the inside, and the security systems had not been tampered with. Everything was in perfect working order, except for the lives that had been destroyed inside. In those first chaotic minutes, the questions that haunted everyone were immediate and horrifying. Who could commit such a brutal act? Who was capable of extinguishing 4 lives with such cold precision? And, perhaps most chillingly, who was the only one left alive? As the paramedics worked quickly to secure the scene and officers began their initial assessment, neighbors began gathering at a safe distance, murmuring anxiously, eyes wide in disbelief. One could almost feel the collective heartbeat of the street slow to a stop as word spread of the massacre inside. This wasn't just a crime, it was a message, a shattering of the illusion of safety in a community that had prided itself on peace and trust. Before we dive deeper into this story, remember to like and share this episode so it reaches as many people as possible. And make sure to follow along every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, because the full truth behind what happened that night is far more complex than it appears at first glance. Now, let's rewind the clock and begin at the beginning, back when life seemed normal, even perfect, for the people whose world was about to be shattered. Our story begins in Chakwal, Punjab, India, a village where the pace of life was slow, traditions were deeply rooted, and families were tightly knit. It was here that Rajveer Singh was born, the only son of loving parents who had high hopes for him. From an early age, Rajveer was described as responsible and diligent, the kind of young man who quietly carried the weight of family expectations. In 2002, when he was just 20 years old, Rajveer married Kiranjit Kaur, a 23-year-old woman who had spent several years living in the United States. Their marriage was arranged in the traditional Punjabi manner, a union guided by family values and expectations rather than love alone. Shortly after the wedding, Rajveer and Kiranjit moved to the United States, ready to start a new life filled with opportunity and promise. Their first years in America were marked by hope and determination. They opened a small gas station in Columbus, Ohio, which initially did well, offering them a sense of financial security and independence. Over time, they built a family, welcoming 3 children who became the center of their lives. On the surface, they appeared to be the perfect immigrant success story, a hardworking couple raising children in a safe, quiet neighborhood, building a life that many envied. In 2006, they took a significant step forward by purchasing a 2-story house on Silver Oak Lane in Hillsboro, Ohio, a town chosen for its safety, school systems, and family-friendly environment. The house was more than just a place to live. It was a symbol of achievement, a testament to the sacrifices they had made. Its garden bloomed beautifully in the spring, and its exterior presented an image of prosperity and stability to neighbors and passers-by. As the family settled into their new home, Kiranjit's parents, Baldev Singh and Harpreet Kaur, moved in to help with raising the children and sharing household responsibilities. Her aunt, Amrit Kaur, also came from India to visit and decided to stay for an extended period. The household, filled with 3 generations under one roof, appeared to be a model of harmony. Kiranjit managed the home with diligence, cooking meals, organizing schedules, and tending to the children's needs, while Rajveer focused on his transportation business, often working long, exhausting hours on the road. From an outsider's perspective, everything seemed perfect. The family was devoutly religious, regularly attending the Gurdwara, and the children excelled in school while maintaining impeccable behavior. Neighbors often spoke highly of Rajveer, describing him as calm, respectful, and approachable. Kiranjit was seen as a devoted, loving mother who prioritized the welfare of her family above all else. Their home was a sanctuary, a place of apparent love and order. But beneath this polished exterior, subtle cracks were forming. Small tensions, secrets, and financial strains that would, over time, set the stage for a tragedy that no one could have predicted. Despite the outward appearance of a happy, thriving family, cracks had begun to appear in Rajveer and Kiranjit's life. Cracks that would soon widen into a chasm of betrayal, anger, and ultimately, tragedy. By 2017, Rajveer Singh's transportation business, Rolling Hills, was no longer the profitable enterprise it had once been. The long hours, constant travel, and mounting debts were taking their toll, and yet he concealed the financial strain from everyone around him. Kiranjit, her parents, and even close neighbors remained unaware of the growing pressure that silently weighed on him. During this period, Rajveer began a clandestine relationship with Simran Kaur, a divorced woman working in the transportation sector in Indianapolis. The two had met years earlier through professional connections, but what started as a casual friendship eventually evolved into a secret affair. For Rajveer, it was both an emotional escape and a dangerous financial burden. He spent thousands of dollars supporting Simran, purchasing an Audi, contributing $20,000 toward a down payment on her house, paying her insurance, and even covering her rent and maintenance costs. By March 2019, Kiranjit accidentally discovered a $20,000 transfer from their joint bank account to Simran Kaur. The moment she realized what had been happening, her world crumbled. The woman she had trusted implicitly, the man she had married and built a life with, was leading a double life. She confronted Rajveer repeatedly, each argument more heated than the last. Her parents, Baldev and Harpreet Singh, became furious, feeling not only the sting of betrayal, but also the threat it posed to their family's stability. Baldev Singh, a man who had devoted his life to protecting his family's honor, immediately sought legal counsel. The house and most of the family's assets were registered in his and Kiranjit's names, which meant that in the event of a divorce, Rajveer could potentially lose everything: his home, control over the children, and financial security. Moreover, within the Punjabi community, infidelity and divorce carry severe social stigma. If word of the affair spread, Rajveer risked not just financial ruin, but also social isolation and lifelong disgrace. Under this immense pressure, Rajveer began to feel cornered. Divorce was not an option he could accept, scandal was intolerable, and financial collapse was imminent. The stress began to warp his thinking, turning desperation into something darker. The man who had once seemed calm, respectful, and dutiful now started considering a terrifying alternative: eliminating the obstacles standing in his way. This was not a sudden impulse born of rage, it was a calculated, deliberate shift in mindset. Rajveer began to see murder as a solution, not as a crime, but as a method to regain control over his life, his reputation, and his finances. In his mind, removing Kiranjit and her family would solve every problem simultaneously. There would be no divorce, no scandal, and the insurance money would secure his future with Simran. And so, what had begun as minor tensions and hidden debts slowly escalated into the seeds of a meticulously planned, horrifying act of violence that would shock everyone who thought they knew this family. By April 2019, Rajveer Singh had fully committed himself to a terrifying plan. The pressure of his failing business, the looming threat of divorce, the social consequences of his affair with Simran Kaur, and the possibility of losing everything he had worked for had warped his mind. In his eyes, There was only one way to regain control. He needed to eliminate the problem entirely. What most people would see as unthinkable, a premeditated act of murder, had become, for Rajveer, a calculated solution. For weeks leading up to the tragedy, he meticulously prepared. He visited multiple stores, carefully selecting items that would aid his plan. Black trash bags, gloves, and tools for cleaning and concealing evidence. He researched methods to destroy physical traces, such as wiping down surfaces, removing gun serial numbers, and even understanding how long police typically take to respond to a 911 call. Every step was deliberate, every detail considered. He wasn't acting out of impulsive anger or temporary rage. He was executing a cold, methodical plan. In addition, Rajveer made financial arrangements that revealed the depth of his calculations. He increased life insurance policies on Kiranjit, her parents Baldev and Harpreet Singh, and her aunt Amrit Kaur, bringing the total coverage to over $800,000. Importantly, he named himself as the sole beneficiary. To the family, he explained it as a way to secure the children's future. But in reality, it was a final piece of the puzzle that would allow him to profit from the destruction he was about to cause. Even the night of the crime was carefully orchestrated. Rajveer ensured that the 3 children would not be present by arranging for them to be out with relatives. They left the house around 7 p.m., unaware that their absence was part of a sinister plan. Inside, Kiranjit and her family were enjoying a normal evening, cooking, talking, and unwinding from the day's activities, completely oblivious to the horror that was about to descend upon them. His preparation extended to every conceivable scenario. He studied the layout of the house, the locations of the security cameras, and the most efficient ways to move through the rooms. He considered how to make the crime scene appear as though it had been committed by strangers, thinking through every detail from start to finish. Gloves would prevent fingerprints. Careful handling of the weapon would ensure no traces, and the subsequent cleaning and disposal of evidence would leave minimal clues. In Rajveer's mind, the plan was flawless. It was not only about eliminating obstacles, it was about creating a narrative in which he could play the grieving husband and son-in-law, the one who discovered the tragedy and called for help. He envisioned a world where the insurance money would provide a fresh start with Simran Kaur, all consequences seemingly avoided. And so, with painstaking attention to detail, the pieces were in place, the plan set, and the night of April 28, 2019, would soon become a date that no one in Hillsborough, Ohio, would ever forget. On the evening of April 28, 2019, the carefully constructed plan of Rajveer Singh moved from preparation to execution. The 3 children had been taken out of the house for dinner with relatives, leaving the home empty of witnesses. Inside, Kiranjit Kaur, her parents Baldev and Harpreet Singh, and her aunt Amrit Kaur carried on with their evening routine. They were completely unaware that within minutes, their lives would be brutally ended. Forensic analysis later revealed that the killings began in the kitchen. Kiranjit, who was either cooking or arranging food, was struck with a single shot to the back of her head. The bullet ended her life instantly. She never saw it coming. Rajveer moved swiftly, methodically, from room to room, executing the plan he had envisioned for weeks. In the living room, her father, Baldev Singh, sat in his favorite rocking chair and was shot twice, once in the chest, once in the head. Forensics indicated that he turned his head at the last second, likely seeing his attacker before he died. Her mother, Harpreet Kaur, attempted to flee after the first gunshots rang out. She ran toward the hallway, desperate to escape, but a bullet struck her in the back, causing her to fall. Rajveer approached and fired a second close-range shot to ensure her death. In the prayer room, her aunt, Amrit Kaur, was killed execution-style with a single bullet to the back of the head. 16 bullets in total were fired inside the house, extinguishing 4 lives in a matter of minutes. After committing the murders, Rajveer did not immediately flee. Instead, he spent 27 minutes inside the house, cleaning, disposing of evidence, and changing his clothes. He wore gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints, and meticulously wiped the weapon he would later throw into a small lake behind the house, only 35 feet away. The serial number on the gun had been scratched off, ensuring it could not be traced. Once his preparations were complete, he changed into clean clothes and stepped outside. At 9:36 p.m., Rajveer made the 911 call, reporting the crime with a voice that sounded distraught and panicked. The dispatcher instructed him to wait outside for the police, which he did, standing on the exterior staircase, barefoot, with blood on his hands and clothes. Officers approached carefully, expecting to find a shaken survivor, but instead, they were confronted with a scene of unimaginable horror. Smoke from the kitchen, bloodied footprints throughout the apartment, and 4 bodies lying lifeless. From the outside, Rajveer appeared grief-stricken, but the calculated precision of the attack soon made investigators question his story. The house showed no signs of forced entry, the security system had not been triggered, and all doors and windows were locked. Whoever committed this crime either lived in the home or knew it intimately. Rajveer Singh, the man pleading for help, was the only person who could provide answers. But at this moment, the truth was far more sinister than anyone imagined. In the immediate aftermath of the massacre, investigators faced a chilling scene. The house on Silver Oak Lane was soaked in blood, the bodies of Kiranjit Kaur, Baldev Singh, Harpreet Kaur, and Amrit Kaur lying lifeless, yet the home showed no signs of forced entry. Doors were locked, windows secured, and the security system had not been tampered with. The question that haunted detectives was simple but terrifying. How could such a crime happen in a perfectly locked house, and who could have committed it? Initially, Rajveer Singh was treated as a witness rather than a suspect. In his 911 call, he claimed that he had returned from a long drive to find the bodies and had immediately called for help. During questioning, he described the scene with a controlled mixture of grief and shock, recounting how he supposedly discovered his family. Yet, experienced officers immediately noticed inconsistencies in his behavior. He cried at moments, but quickly regained composure. He resisted certain procedures, such as the gunshot residue test, becoming defensive and angry, claiming he needed to leave for his children. As investigators dug deeper, more contradictions emerged. Cell phone and location data revealed that Rajveer's truck had been parked directly outside the house by 9:09 p.m., and his phone connected to the home Wi-Fi at 9:01 p.m. Yet the 911 call was not made until 9:36 p.m. Those missing 27 minutes became the focal point of suspicion. During this window, investigators suspected he had cleaned up, disposed of evidence, and prepared the narrative he would present to authorities. Neighbors also came forward with critical testimony. Manpreet Singh, who walked his dog at the same time every evening, reported hearing 4 to 5 gunshots in rapid succession. Seconds later, he noticed something heavy hitting the nearby lake. Surveillance footage later captured a figure exiting the back door at 9:47 p.m., matching Rajveer's height, build, and clothing. These observations corroborated suspicions that Rajveer had been inside during the murders, not outside discovering them afterward. The dive team recovered the weapon from the lake less than an hour later. It was a .40 caliber handgun, its serial number erased, but forensic examination confirmed that the 16 shell casings in the house had all been fired from it. Further investigation revealed Rajveer's DNA on the gun's grip, suggesting prolonged handling within the home. Inside the garage, hidden gloves with his hair and blood were discovered, alongside an external hard drive containing internet searches for silencers, body decomposition rates, and methods to erase gun serial numbers. Deleted messages from Simran Kaur also emerged, showing that Rajveer had repeatedly promised her a life free from obstacles, including his family. Every piece of evidence, the forensic data, the surveillance footage, location tracking, and recovered messages, pointed to the same chilling conclusion. The murders were premeditated, deliberate, and carried out by Rajveer Singh. Nothing about the scene, the timeline, or his behavior suggested that the crime had been committed by strangers. The man who appeared to be the grieving husband was, in fact, the architect of a meticulously planned tragedy. After months of meticulous investigation, Rajveer Singh's fate began to close in. On July 2, 2019, authorities arrested him in Bradford, Connecticut, where he had fled to stay with a relative. He was taken into custody and transported back to Ohio. Upon arrest, Rajveer maintained an air of innocence, claiming he was just as devastated as the rest of the world and did not understand why he was being detained. But investigators knew the truth. The evidence was overwhelming, and it painted a damning picture of premeditated murder. The first trial began in October 2022, with prosecutors presenting 127 pieces of evidence, each meticulously linked to Rajveer. Gunshot residue tests confirmed he had fired a weapon the night of the killings. DNA recovered from gloves and the weapon matched him. Location data from his phone and truck placed him at the scene during the critical 27-minute window before the 911 call. Deleted messages to Simran Kaur revealed his intent to remove his family from the equation and start a new life. Internet searches on topics such as how to erase gun serial numbers and body decomposition rates further confirmed premeditation. The defense attempted several strategies to create doubt. They claimed the evidence was circumstantial and suggested the killings could have been committed by an unknown gang tied to land disputes in India. They also posited that Rajveer might not have been present during the murders. However, the prosecution dismantled these arguments point by point. There was no evidence of intruders, no surveillance footage of strangers, and no history of any land dispute that could connect a third party to the crime. Every claim was speculative, and witnesses, including neighbors and digital forensic experts, contradicted the defense's narrative. During the first trial, a jury considered the evidence for 5 weeks. Ultimately, after 4 days of deliberation, 11 jurors voted to convict, while 1 held out. This deadlock resulted in a mistrial, forcing the legal process to start over. The second trial began in February 2023, this time opting for a bench trial with 3 judges rather than a jury. Rajveer's defense strategy shifted dramatically. They admitted he had been present in the house, but claimed he fled in fear when masked men attacked the family with baseball bats. According to the defense, Rajveer had supposedly witnessed the killings but was too terrified to intervene. Yet again, there was no supporting evidence. No cameras captured intruders, no neighbors reported sounds of a struggle, and no masks or weapons were ever found. After carefully reviewing the evidence over 2 days, the judicial panel delivered their verdict. Rajveer Singh was guilty of the premeditated murders of his entire family. His demeanor remained cold and emotionless, showing no remorse as the verdict was read. The trial then moved to the penalty phase, where the judges considered whether Rajveer would receive life imprisonment or the death penalty. Ultimately, on May 14, 2024, the judges sentenced him to 4 separate death penalties, 1 for each victim, along with 12 additional years in prison for other related charges. The court proceedings concluded, but the aftermath of Rajveer's actions would linger indefinitely, especially for the surviving children who had lost their mother, grandparents, and aunt at the hands of the man who was supposed to protect them. With the verdict and sentencing concluded, the shocking reality of Rajveer Singh's actions settled over Hillsborough, Ohio, like a heavy shadow. Justice had been served in the courtroom, but the consequences of his crime reached far beyond legal closure. The 3 surviving children, innocent bystanders in a nightmare, were left to navigate a life forever altered. Stripped of their mother, grandparents, and aunt, they now lived with relatives in another state, their identities carefully protected for safety and privacy. The trauma of losing almost their entire family to the hands of their father was a burden too heavy for words. For the local community, the massacre was more than just a tragic headline. It challenged the sense of security that residents of Silver Oak Lane and surrounding neighborhoods had long taken for granted. Neighbors who had casually waved to Rajveer Singh and his family now confronted the chilling truth. The man they had trusted, who appeared calm, respectful, and devoted, was capable of executing a horrifying act of calculated murder. The breach of trust reverberated through every street, every interaction, leaving a permanent scar on the collective psyche of the town. Psychologists and social workers began working with the children, attempting to help them process their grief, fear, and confusion. The road ahead would be long and arduous. Each child faced the dual challenge of mourning the family they had lost while reconciling the unimaginable fact that their father, the man meant to protect them, was the one who had taken those lives. Questions that would haunt them for years surfaced. How could a parent commit such a crime? How does one trust again after betrayal so profound? These were not just questions of justice, but of survival and emotional recovery. Meanwhile, the life insurance policies that Rajveer had so carefully manipulated were contested in court. Legal representatives for the children and surviving family members ensured that he would not benefit from the deaths he had caused. The community watched closely as the justice system upheld the principle that calculated murder for financial gain would never be tolerated. Rajveer Singh himself remains on death row at Warren Correctional Institution in Ohio, awaiting execution. He lives confined, separated from the world, stripped of freedom and power, but still a chilling reminder of the consequences of greed, betrayal, and calculated evil. The three children, those surrounded by love and support from extended family, must learn to navigate life in a world forever altered by tragedy. The story of Rajveer Singh is one of meticulous planning, cold calculation, and ultimate justice. Yet it also reminds us that even when justice is served, the pain and loss endured by survivors cannot be fully measured. Families can be destroyed in minutes, and lives can be irreparably altered, leaving behind a haunting question. How does one rebuild after such darkness? With that, today's episode concludes. If this is your first time watching, subscribe and turn on notifications to follow every update. Wait for me in the next episode. Goodbye, and remember, the truth, however painful, must always be faced. Viewers, what drives a person to commit such unimaginable acts? How can someone plan and execute a crime so meticulously, taking the lives of those closest to them without a single moment of hesitation? Have you ever tried to imagine what goes through the mind of someone like Rajveer Singh before, during, and even after such a tragedy? Think about it. Most of us face pressure, betrayal, financial stress, or anger in our daily lives. Yet we choose a path of patience, dialogue, or seeking help. Why do some people cross the line into violence? Is it greed, fear, ego, or something deeper within their psychology that overrides empathy entirely? How does a person stop thinking about consequences, morality, or the pain of others? We want to hear your thoughts, viewers. Do you think society, upbringing, or personal circumstances play a bigger role in shaping such behavior? Can these acts ever be prevented, or are some people destined to follow a dark path once certain pressures build? Share your views with us. What do you think pushes a person to commit a crime like this? Like, comment, share, and subscribe if you found this story both shocking and thought-provoking. Your insights might help us all better understand the human mind, its fragility, and the consequences of crossing moral boundaries. We'll meet you next time for another story that dives deep into the hidden truths behind real-life events.